At 2 p.m., Jiang Yi walked out of the east gate of Haizhou University, talking on the phone with her partner, Qin Han. Xiao Yi, wait there for me. I'm coming over right away. Her assistant, Yuan, called out as she hailed a Didi ride and hurriedly made her way to the roadside. Jiang Yi, under the scorching sun of early summer, sweated profusely, phone in hand. We only have half a month left. How are we going to make it? Has the overseas returnee boss lost his mind? No choice. Those who pay the money call the shots. Where's the integrity? Fine, we don't have that. After graduating, Jiang Yi had spent 2 comfortable years in a state-owned enterprise, living a mundane life of 9 to 5. Watching her weight skyrocket and her mental state shrink, she finally decided, despite her parents' objections, to quit and join the ranks of entrepreneurship. 2 months ago, Jiang Yi took on a major project responsible for the opening planning of Yuanhe Plaza. Located in the city's subcenter, this super-commercial complex was rumored to have strong backing, with the big boss being a returned overseas elite. Last week, the plan was almost finalized when Yuanhe suddenly changed its mind today. For no particular reason, the big boss behind Yuanhe returned to take control, perfectly demonstrating the saying, "One word from above, and the whole team scrambles below." Jiang Yi was utterly speechless about dealing with this, my way or the highway client. By this time, she had reached the sidewalk. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw a black sedan, vaguely recalling the Didi page she had seen Yuan call from earlier. Without much thought, she opened the car door and got in. The car hadn't turned off, and the driver was nowhere to be seen. After finishing the call, Jiang Yi, exhausted, leaned back in the rear seat, taking a moment to realize Yuan hadn't arrived yet. "Hey, where's the tortoise crawling?" she opened WeChat to ask when she caught a glimpse of something out of the corner of her eye. The car window was suddenly knocked twice, at a steady pace. Jiang Yi glanced over, only seeing the man's waist and abdomen, dressed in a slightly businesslike shirt, his abs tight, almost visible through the fabric. The knocking sounded twice again, and Jiang Yi rolled down the window. Light footsteps, Shen Zhaonian slowly took a step back, looking down. "What are you doing?" His clear voice fell. Jiang Yi's movement stiffened, suddenly looked up, locking eyes with him. Shen Zhaonian looked at his reflection in those eyes, his face showing no expression, calm and indifferent. Jiang Yi stared at him, stunned for a moment, her voice hoarse. "Shen Zhaonian, what are you doing here?" Shen Zhaonian crossed his arms, a faint smile. "This is my car." The bell rang and Yuan called, "Xiao Yi, where are you?" "The car's here." Jiang Yi blinked in confusion, saw Shen Zhaonian's playful expression, and suddenly felt her face burning. Damn it! Took the wrong car. She used both hands and feet to get out of the car, turning around to see Yuan waving at her from a distance. She wanted nothing more than to find a hole to hide in. This was so embarrassing. Shen Zhaonian smirked. It seems that Miss Jiang is incurable in her habit of not seeing when she walks. Jiang Yi took a deep breath. "Thank you for your concern, but my eyes have always been blind, both in walking and in seeing people. It's incurable," she hinted. Shen Zhaonian naturally wouldn't fail to understand. His face turned ugly, sneered. "Jiang Yi, can't you say a word without courting death?" "That depends on who I'm talking to." Jiang Yi adjusted her bag strap. "I'm really sorry about today, Mr. Shen. I'll make it up to you another day." Shen Zhaonian watched her walk away, silent for a moment, finally mocking a grin, turned back to look at the unique architectural library building on campus. At this point, the driver was back. "Sorry, Mr. Shen, it's a bit hot today. I went to buy a bottle of water." Shen Zhaonian nodded, sitting silently in the car. In the back seat, there seemed to still be a faint orange blossom fragrance from the woman, permeating everywhere, as if it wanted to seep into his bloodstream. Jiang Yi and Shen Zhaonian were classmates in college. It was a perfect day with clear skies, and she was grinding her teeth while researching in the school library. Thinking about the chance to return to her high school alma mater, she was determined to slam the heap of materials in her hands on the faces of those teachers who promoted freedom in college, giving them a taste of true freedom. Ignoring the saying, "A day as a teacher, a lifetime as a father," Jiang Yi was plotting to debunk and challenge tradition, but her thoughts were interrupted by her roommate's relentless calls. Xiao Yi, wasting away in the library during your university days is hopeless. Come quickly to the basketball court. The campus basketball tournament was in full swing today, featuring a match between the School of Economics and the Humanities Department. Her roommates had already secured the best viewing spots early on. Of course, it wasn't just about the game. It was about watching Xin Zhaoyan. Xin Zhaoyan had gained considerable popularity in the department in just a few weeks, thanks to his exceptionally good looks. Baby, you've got 3 minutes to get here, or you're not joining us for meet tonight. Jiang Yi lived by one motto: you can skip looking at handsome guys, but you can't skip eating meat. So, she immediately packed up and rushed out. At that moment, Shen Zhaoyan was annoyed by a few overly enthusiastic senior sisters. After finally getting away, he ran to the nearest restroom near the basketball court, which happened to be under renovation on the first floor, so he headed straight for the second floor without waiting for the hallway to clear. Just as he reached the second floor, he heard hurried footsteps. And that was how Jiang Yi and Shen Zhaoyan collided head-on for the first time. Ah! Hearing the exclamation, Shen Zhaoyan didn't have time to react and instinctively reached out. Careful! He was pulled forward by inertia and lost his balance, his left foot twisting to the side, causing him to sit down heavily. With a snap, Shen Zhaoyan's face turned pale, and he involuntarily gasped. Still dazed, Jiang Yi looked down and saw a young man, somewhat familiar-looking, with a sweatband on his forehead, his features strikingly handsome. Her scattered thoughts finally gathered, and it took her several seconds to come to her senses. Are you okay, classmate? Shen Zhaoyan was covered in cold sweat, feeling annoyed. He pushed her hand away impatiently. Don't touch me. Can't you see when you're walking? Jiang Yi was immediately startled by his shout and hurriedly muttered, I am sorry. Shen Zhaoyan impatiently glanced up, meeting a pair of misty eyes. That year, Jiang Yi was 18 years old, in a light-colored shirt with long, black hair cascading over her shoulders. She wore neatly fitting trousers and white sneakers. She didn't have a stunning appearance, but like a breeze through willows or cherry blossoms in March, she gave off a sense of cleanliness and comfort. At first glance, she seemed ordinary, but Shen Zhaoyan couldn't forget this scene for many years to come. Meanwhile, someone who had been temporarily bewitched by her looks cursed silently in his heart. Thinking he wasn't so rude as to make a girl cry, he added impatiently, I think I've fractured something. Don't touch. Just then, someone shouted from downstairs, Zhaoyan, hurry down, it's time to play. Jiang Yi's eyes caught sight of a basketball jersey peeking out from a corner, and she heard his mention of fracture, causing her heart to skip a beat. At that moment, her phone buzzed with a message from her roommate lying on the ground. Why aren't you here yet? With Shen Zhaoyan on the team, they're saying our department can win this year. Several exclamation marks and a flurry of emojis danced before her eyes. With the lively music playing in the distant basketball court, Jiang Yi finally remembered who the young man before her was, the main player for this year's economics department basketball team, Shen Zhaoyan. Oh no, she had just caused a major disaster. The annual campus basketball tournament ended in a decisive defeat for the School of Economics, securing them the dubious honor of being the 7th consecutive last-place champions. Meanwhile, Shen Zhaoyan, once seen as a promising star player, was now sidelined for 3 long months due to a fractured bone. Burdened by guilt for both sabotaging the economics team's victory and causing her classmates injury, Jiang Yi resolved to take responsibility for caring for Shen Zhaoyan. However, Shen Zhaoyan responded indifferently to her efforts, showing little appreciation even as she dutifully brought him meals and books day after day. One morning during break, Jiang Yi ran into Shen Zhaoyan in the hallway as usual and asked, "What would you like for lunch today?" Curious and ambiguous glances were cast their way. Shen Zhaoyan rubbed his forehead. "You've already paid for my medical expenses. There's no need for you to do this." "It's no trouble at all. They're just little things," Jiang Yi replied casually. She had quickly learned through brief interactions and hearsay that Shen Zhaoyan was proud and cared about his image. He was usually indifferent to group activities, except for those girls who were captivated by his looks. Most classmates had average relationships with him, so no one else seemed to notice or care enough to assist him. Feeling responsible for his injury, Jiang Yi felt it was her duty to help him as much as she could. But someone couldn't resist chiming in with, "Hey Zhaoyan, all the girls are chasing after you. Why not just say yes?" This remark drew more attention, and it felt as if they were watching a zoo monkey. Irritated, Zhaoyan snapped back, "Mind your own business." However, in his annoyance, he momentarily forgot about his crutches, causing him to lose balance and sway to the side. Quick to react, Jiang Yi reached out and steadied him. "Be careful." Zhaoyan's pride was stung. "Jiang, I don't need your help. Your actions only trouble me," he said sharply before pushing her hand away and walking into the classroom. Jiang Yi was dumbfounded, unable to understand why he suddenly became upset. As the break ended and classes resumed, Zhaoyan couldn't shake the image of Jiang Yi's bewildered expression from his mind, feeling oddly uncomfortable. Initially suspicious of Jiang Yi's intentions, he soon realized through their interactions that her concern was genuine. He admitted to himself that he had never encountered someone so sincere before, leaving him at a loss for harsh words. Despite Zhaoyan rejecting her kindness once again that morning, Jiang Yi, true to her word, went to the cafeteria to fetch their lunches. It normally took only 10 minutes to walk from the classroom building to the dorms, even with Zhaoyan's injury. However, today, she waited patiently on the wooden sofa in the boys' dorm duty room for over an hour without seeing him return. Unbeknownst to her, Zhaoyan had been whisked away by several senior club members for an off-campus gathering. By the time he returned, lunch break was almost over. Approaching the dormitory, Jiang Yi overheard a couple of murmurs from inside. "Isn't that Jiang Yi from the Writing Society? Who is she waiting for?" "You don't know? She's waiting for Zhaoyan." Being handsome has its perks. Girls come running to the dorm for him. Two boys walked out of the gate just as Zhaoyan happened to bump into them, making for an awkward encounter. They quickened their pace and hurried away. Hearing through the window, Jiang Yi sat idly on the wooden sofa, playing with her phone. It was getting dark outside, but the lights inside cast a soft glow on her porcelain-like profile, next to a lunchbox filled with cold food. After observing her quietly for a while, Zhaoyan finally moved with his crutch and entered. Jiang Yi looked up, blinking. "Where did you go?" There was a hint of complaint in her soft voice. "I had something to take care of. I'll let you know next time before I leave," Zhaoyan replied as he sat down and picked up the lunchbox. Surprised by his unusually polite tone, Jiang Yi remarked, "It's cold now." "It's fine. Want to stay a bit longer? I'll give you the lunchbox after I finish." Jiang Yi nodded. "Sure." Although Zhaoyan wasn't hungry, he leisurely finished the cooled meal. Downstairs in the dormitory, students continued to come and go. Sitting together, Zhaoyan ate silently while Jiang Yi played on her phone, their lack of conversation belying a surprisingly harmonious atmosphere. After that day, Zhaoyan no longer rebuffed Jiang Yi's kindness. They quickly became familiar with each other, especially after Jiang Yi discovered Zhaoyan's passion for collecting books. Initially intent on majoring in Chinese literature, Jiang Yi developed a deep admiration for him. She playfully teased him about his book collection, which had grown exponentially thanks to her. Love is a strange thing that takes root unexpectedly in the heart, and before they knew it, amidst the already rampant pink rumors, they realized their true feelings for each other and finally got together. Graduation season brought a sharp rise in breakup rates among school couples. Amidst this melancholy, Jiang Yi and Zhaoyan were striving for their postgraduate entrance exams. After their defense, students departed in droves. With only a week left before the exams, Jiang Yi managed a quick trip home, only to be bombarded with documents, enrollment materials for a closed-door civil service exam training school. "Don't pursue postgraduate studies. I've already paid the tuition for this. You'll enroll next month," her domineering father insisted. using both soft and hard tactics to once again exert control over her choice, now with the authority of experience. Jiang Yi resisted. Her father, recovering from surgery, clutched his heart in distress, berating her for disobedience. Her mother, panicked, reached for the emergency hotline. It all played out like a ludicrous farce. When Shen Zhaoyan picked her up at the high-speed rail station, she had just finished crying in a bus terminal chair. Unlike many, Jiang Yi's initial impression of her father wasn't that of an invincible hero, but rather a devil reeking of alcohol and swinging his fists recklessly. He was authoritarian, hot-tempered, and controlling. Piece by piece, he tore apart her dreams, leaving her with no strength to resist after years of enduring. She yearned to escape, yet whenever faced with her father's softened demeanor or her mother's earnest advice, she couldn't bring herself to let go. Weak, indecisive, lacking in security. This was the real and pitiable Jiang Yi. Tears covered her face, and as she tried to wipe them away, they only smeared, her vision blurring further, and finally, a sense of grievance slowly sprouted in her heart and spread rapidly. "Why are you crying?" When Shen Zhaoyan got off the train and saw the trembling shoulders of the girl, he was startled. He hurried over and crouched beside her. "Xiao Yi, what's wrong?" Jiang Yi threw herself into his arms. "Zhaoyan, Shen Zhaoyan." Seeing the girl he liked with tearful eyes, lost and aggrieved, Shen Zhaoyan's mind went blank, leaving only a soft ache. No one should see her this upset. Shen Zhaoyan didn't press for answers, just gently patted her back. "I'm here. Don't cry." Later, Jiang Yi only mentioned being worried about the exam pressure being too much. Shen Zhaoyan didn't doubt her, just shook his head in a mix of anger and amusement. They didn't talk much, but it was the only time he skipped his study schedule, taking her on a bike ride to see the night view by the lake. The December wind carried the chill of winter. Jiang Yi slipped her hand into Shen Zhaoyan's pocket and gently held onto him. The wind was truly cold, but there was a hole in her heart, where cold winds howled louder than in her body. In the days that followed, Jiang Yi acted as if nothing had happened, studying as usual and going with Shen Zhaoyan to the exam center. Only, she didn't enter the exam room. Many people diligently wrote their exams, striving towards a brighter future. Outside, Jiang Yi tore up her notes one by one and threw them into the trash. Shen Zhaoyan noticed something was wrong on the day of the results. It had rained heavily in the evening. Jiang Yi was packing her bags in her room, getting ready to leave for the training school next week. Her phone lit up on the bed, and there were only 2 words in the WeChat chat box with Shen Zhaoyan: "Come down." The neighborhood's streetlights were shrouded in mist, faint and blurry. Leaning against the wall, rainwater dripping down his hair, sliding over his cheeks, neck, and finally soaking into his drenched clothes, Shen Zhaoyan turned as he heard hurried footsteps approaching in the corridor. He saw Jiang Yi's face, surprised and at a loss. Jiang Yi had never seen Shen Zhaoyan like this. Panicking, she quickly took off her down jacket and handed it to him. "It's pouring so hard. Why didn't you bring an umbrella?" Shen Zhaoyan stared into her eyes, gritted his teeth, and uttered 3 words: "You lied to me." Jiang Yi gasped, "You found out. Why?" Shen Zhaoyan's voice was hoarse. "No reason. I just wanted to start working sooner." Shen Zhaoyan didn't buy this explanation. "I'll accompany you to take the exam again." It wasn't a question. Jiang Yi was disgusted by this display of stubbornness, so reminiscent of her father. "I don't want to." "Then tell me why." "We agreed to go to Capital University together." "What do you think you're doing to me?" "Playing games." "I just don't want to take the exam." "Shen Zhaoyan, I'm an adult, I know what I'm doing. Can't you respect my choice?" Shen Zhaoyan asked in a slightly choked voice, "And what about me?" "What? Do you know how far Haizhou is from the capital?" Jiang Yi took a deep breath, her eyes reddening. "You can get there quickly by plane." Shen Zhaoyan didn't say anything. A long time passed before he tossed the jacket back to Jiang Yi. "Do as you please." He turned to leave. Jiang Yi's heart tightened, and she grabbed his arm. "Zhaoyan." He looked back. Jiang Yi didn't know what to say. She held out the umbrella she had brought down. "Take it." He didn't take it, just gave a bitter smile and strode into the rain. That was their first argument. She stood there as he walked away in anger. On the day Shin Jiaonian left for the capital, Jiang Yi was in the classroom undergoing rigorous training sessions. The roar of the plane passed overhead. She looked up, staring at the azure sky for a long time. Jiang Yi and Shin Jiaonian didn't break up. After the Cold War, it was as if that rainy night had never happened. They began like every long-distance couple, from long phone calls to sending just a few short messages each day. Longing grew like hair, each night stretching longer. Jiang Yi went to see Shin Jiaonian once, finding him deep in conversation with his entrepreneurial classmates, while she remained on the outskirts of that world. Love is like a boat, time like water. Time can nurture love, yet it can also destroy it. Their love slowly sank. Eventually, there were no new messages in their pinned chat box. Later on, Shin Jiaonian went abroad, and Jiang Yi fulfilled her father's wish by succeeding in the civil service exams. Only those promises made in their youth, of growing old together, gradually became distant memories amidst life's ebb and flow. On Friday morning, Jiang Yi marched confidently into Yuanhe, determined to outwit the seemingly clueless returning boss. However, her plans were thwarted right at the underground parking lot by a chubby cat blocking her way. They stood facing each other in front of the elevator. The fat cat stretched its neck, gazed at her with big eyes, tilted its head lazily, and let out a casual meow. Jiang Yi found it oddly charming in its small-eyed look and nonchalant meow. She refused to admit she was charmed, maintaining a composed demeanor as she observed. It was an orange cat, clean and well-groomed, clearly someone's pet. The chubby cat arched its back and rubbed against her ankle. Jiang Yi stayed still, and it responded with another meow, seemingly dissatisfied with the presence of these two-legged creatures before it. Jiang Yi chuckled and squatted down to pet it. The cat purred contentedly under her touch. Its entire body was a pure yellow, except for a little white spot on its forehead, reminiscent of a kitten she had found in college. Shin Jiaonian entered with his car keys, immediately noticing the scene. The girl petting the cat brought back memories from deep within. 5 years seemed to overlap in an inevitable pull back to the past. In their sophomore year, Jiang Yi had found a skinny little cat on the road, named it Tang Yuan, and kept it in the dorm for a long time. Eventually, the dorm supervisor discovered Tang Yuan, and Jiang Yi had no choice but to take it to a nearby bubble tea shop she frequented. The shop housed many stray animals. The owner decided to keep Tang Yuan, and Jiang Yi began visiting more often just to see the kitten. Every time, Shin Jiaonian sat by the bookshelf, waiting for her. Whenever he looked up, his beloved girl greeted the sunlight, leaning against the window with little Tang Yuan by her side. Instinctively, he pulled out his phone to capture their silhouettes against the sunlight, setting the photo as his wallpaper with the words at the bottom, "Raise a cat and be with you." Shin Jiaonian had many dreams about the future, but at that moment, he felt complete with Jiang Yi and Tang Yuan. Coming back to reality, he saw Jiang Yi pick up Tang Yuan, muttering, "Goodness, why are you so heavy?" Feeling a tickle in his heart, he remained composed and said, "Tang Yuan, come here." Jiang Yi turned and saw him, visibly surprised. Tang Yuan meowed in protest, still clinging to her shoulder. Shin Jiaonian glanced at the defiant Tang Yuan, reached out, grabbed its neck, and forcibly pulled it back. Tang Yuan protested with a loud meow, accusing the caretaker of violence. "It said you're fat and bothering people," Shin Jiaonian retorted calmly. Embarrassed, Jiang Yi scratched her head. "Is this Tang Yuan?" As the elevator arrived, Shin Jiaonian stepped in. "Does it concern you?" Jiang Yi watched him close the elevator door and muttered, "What a temper," not giving much thought to why he was there. 5 minutes later, after Jiang Yi's proposed modifications were all rejected, she couldn't help but think she was right a few days ago. This returning boss must have something wrong with his head. Shin Jiaonian threw the folder on the table. "Yuanhe is a high-end commercial complex, not a bargain basement. Your company's proposal is essentially lowering our standards. I've always trusted Miss Zhang's business acumen, but this proposal is quite surprising." Jiang Yi, usually detached in work mode, decided she had had enough. "Mr. Shen, Forgive me if I'm wrong, but whether it's a black cat or a white cat, the good cat catches mice. Speaking of which, Haizhou is a strange place. Many foreign companies struggle to adapt. Isn't that interesting? The room fell silent as everyone looked at Jiang Yi as if she were a hero. Shen Zhaonian smirked, his eyes reflecting an indiscernible emotion. He kicked his chair back and stood up. I wasn't satisfied with the previous version. No need for modifications. We'll start fresh. After leaving Yuanhe, Chenhan asked, "Do you know that Ritterni?" Jiang Yi's expression was difficult to describe. My ex-boyfriend. Do you think I know him or not? Chenhan looked astonished. Damn. You handle this yourself. I'm out. Take care. With that, he dashed out of her office. Whether Shen Zhaonian was genuinely dissatisfied or just causing trouble, Jiang Yi began a workaholic mode from then on, working overtime tirelessly. Just as the new project was nearing completion, Jiang Yi saw a photo inadvertently taken by a friend and hurried to Xiang Park. Xiang Park, near Haizhou University, used to be quiet except for residents and students strolling. But somehow, it had become a famous spot for matchmaking corners, crowded with elderly people concerned about their children's marriages. From afar, Jiang Yi spotted Mrs. Lu chatting enthusiastically with a young man near a flower bed. Beside her was a sign prominently displaying Jiang Yi's photo and details. Incensed, Jiang Yi's vision darkened. Mom, what are you doing here? Mrs. Lu's eyes darted nervously. Isn't this to find you a match? Jiang Yi grabbed the sign and her. Am I such a failure that I need you here? Come with me. Hey, who said you're a failure? But aren't you too busy? Mrs. Lu argued unwillingly. I'm telling you, the young man I just talked to is quite good, has a career, and comes from a decent family. Mom, Jiang Yi's temples pulsed. Can't you just lay off? This has become gossip among my friends. How do you think they'll see me? Mrs. Lu retorted, I'm just concerned. Look at girls your age. Kids are everywhere. And you shouldn't be here either. How many times have I refused blind dates you set up? You dare say that? Every time you put on that unwilling face, who are you trying to impress? This is a major decision in life. I should at least find someone I like. Mrs. Lu was immediately incensed by these words. I'm just sincere. You're always unwilling to talk to people. How would you know if someone suits you or not? I feel embarrassed coming here. You're nearly 30 and still single. Have you ever thought about our family's reputation? You've done well for yourself, making money and not even willing to come home. Your father's been unwell these past years. Are you trying to kill him? Unable to hold back, Jiang Yi roared. He's the one trying to kill me. What kind of father says, if you're not married by 30, you might as well die? Mrs. Lu choked. He was angry. If only you were more obedient. How much more obedient do you want me to be? I like writing. You tore up my drafts. I wanted to study Chinese. You forced me into economics. I wanted to take the postgraduate entrance exam. Dad quietly paid tens of thousands to make me go to a public school. Since I was young, you've dictated everything. Do you even see me as a person? She remembered the torn-up drafts, shattered dreams. She remembered the relentless pressure and the forced choices. And the rainy day she checked her exam results for the postgraduate entrance, Shen Zhaonian stood soaked in the corridor, awkwardly asking her why. If children owe their parents a debt just by being born, how long must she repay it? Mrs. Lu was agitated. What are you saying? Is it wrong for you to take a stable civil service job after graduation? Just finish university. Why pursue further studies? You're a girl. Can't you just behave properly? I'm your mother. Shouldn't I look out for you? Jiang Yi threw the sign into the passenger seat, pointing at the filled-out information, treating me like a commodity for others to pick and choose. You really are my mother. Jiang Yi, be fair. We raised you. Suddenly, a cat jumped out from nowhere, startling Mrs. Lu into a cry. Jiang Yi reacted swiftly, blocking it, but felt a sharp pain in her arm. She looked around, but there was no one there. The chubby cat, named Tang Yuan, sat looking at her innocently. Meow. Mrs. Lu said, Whose cat is this? You only know how to keep, not manage, huh? What if it hurts someone? Rolling up her shirt sleeve, Jiang-yi hailed a taxi at the intersection. I've been incredibly busy lately. Please don't cause trouble for me. After this busy period, if you want me to go on blind dates, get married, I won't object at all. Are you satisfied now? Mrs. Liu was pushed into the car. Really? You said that. Don't go back on your word later. Feeling drained, Jiang-yi said nothing more, gave the driver an address, and slammed the car door shut. Taxi gradually drove away. Jiang-yi turned around and found Tang Yuan already at her feet. She glanced at the cat but ignored it, sitting directly into the car. Her phone, placed on the tea tray, showed several missed calls from Chen Han. Returning the calls, they were all work-related matters. She responded, I understand, I'll be back right away. Out of the corner of her eye, she caught sight of the matchmaking sign beside her. Jiang-yi's eyes instantly reddened. Days of exhaustion, recent anger, and helplessness all surged up at once. She covered her face with her hand, leaning against the steering wheel, tears silently falling. In the oppressive silence, the sound of tapping on the glass suddenly pierced her ears. Jiang-yi lifted her head, rolled down the window, and saw Shen Zhaoyan standing beside the car holding Tang Yuan. He slightly bent forward, his gaze meeting hers with complex emotions. He had brought Tang Yuan to the tea shop to visit its previous owner, but unexpectedly heard Jiang-yi's argument with her mother through the window. Jiang-yi hesitated, feeling embarrassed. Mr. Shen, what brings you here? If I remember correctly, we still have 2 days until the project presentation. Shen Zhaoyan subtly furrowed his brow, resisting the impulse to wipe her tears away. Get out of the car. Huh. Shen Zhaoyan opened the car door. Get out by yourself? Or do I need to drag you out? Before Jiang-yi could react, he had already grabbed her wrist. Shen Zhaoyan, what are you doing? Shen Zhaoyan reached for the matchmaking sign, tore it to pieces, and threw it into the trash bin. As he did so, he said, Get into the passenger seat. Then he sat in the driver's seat himself. As the car pulled out of the parking lot, Jiang-yi held Tang Yuan, her mind still in a daze. Where are you taking me? To the hospital, for a vaccination. Jiang-yi subconsciously lowered her head and adjusted her sleeve. There was a red mark on her fair arm. Your cat has been vaccinated, so it should be fine. I still have work to do. I need to go to the office. If you want to ruin yourself, I won't stop you. But don't harm Tang Yuan. I'm not interested in having it carry the burden of someone's life. Jiang-yi felt choked with emotions. At the dog bite clinic, there weren't many people. Shen Zhaoyan quickly queued for registration, paid for the medicine, and 10 minutes later, Jiang-yi followed a nurse into the injection room. He sat outside on a chair, Tang Yuan squirming discontentedly in his arms. He reached out and patted it. Stop moving around. Scratch her and you'll be in trouble. Tonight, you'll go hungry. Shocked by this cruel statement, Tang Yuan meowed loudly in protest. Shen Zhaoyan remained unmoved, using firmness to subdue it. In the next room, as the nurse threw the medicine, she remarked casually, Your boyfriend is really nice. When he brought the medicine over, he said you're afraid of pain and asked me to be gentle. Jiang-yi was rolling up her sleeve and froze upon hearing this. She lowered her eyes slightly and murmured softly, He's not my boyfriend. Disaster struck, and Jiang-yi ended up getting 5 rabies shots. Whether it was due to Shen Zhaoyan feeling a twinge of conscience, 2 days later, when she submitted the project proposal, she wasn't pressured at all and successfully sealed the deal. Jiang-yi resumed her busy preparations. Yuanhe's opening coincided with the Qixi Festival. Among a series of events, the most popular was the matchmaking event. After hastily completing an event, Jiang-yi immediately ran to the matchmaking venue. The halftime performance heightened the atmosphere, and Shen Zhaoyan sat in the front row, legs crossed lazily against the chair back. A song later, the host took the stage. Romantic Qixi, I met you at Yuanhe. Welcome, everyone. On this special day, we have prepared exciting prizes. Participating is simple. Please scan the QR code on the screen, follow Yuanhe's official WeChat account, and send your love declaration or the one sentence you most want to say to your loved one. Shortly, we will draw lucky viewers. Alright, let's pause the music and continue with our event. The next segment is something you've been waiting for. Let's count down from 3 together and welcome a romantic balloon drop. On the 3rd floor, a large net filled with pink balloons was ready. Jiang Yi put on her headphones. 3rd floor ready. The host's voice amplified through the microphone. 3, 2, 1. As the countdown ended, a shower of balloons cascaded down, eliciting cheers and applause from the crowd. Among the seated audience, only Shin Zhaoyan remained, eyes lowered, absorbed in his phone. Meanwhile, the lottery draw had begun on stage. Various avatars flashed on the big screen, finally stopping on one. Jiang Yi saw Tong Yuan's chubby face, with a single letter below the avatar. S. The screen changed, displaying a line of text against a white background. 2 trees not in the forest, hearts meeting under the field. It was a love message. Suddenly, she turned her head, looking towards the seats. The host on stage asked which audience member it was, but Shen Zhaoyan paid no attention. He lifted his chin slightly, locking eyes with Jiang Yi from afar. Over the years, he had met better people and even thought of never returning to Haizhou. Yet, the girl in the light-colored shirt always stubbornly appeared, in restless nights, in moments of vulnerability and exhaustion, in his mind and in his heart. The girl he fell in love with at 18 had become the rampant longing at 28. I've finally decided to give myself a chance. If fate truly exists, then I will continue to love you despite everything. At the moment the avatar froze on the screen, Shen Zhaoyan suddenly smiled. He got up, walked through the crowd, and grabbed Jiang Yi's hand, pulling her outside. Near the side entrance of the mall, there were 2 shops without any brand names, creating a dimly lit area. Why did you pull me out? Jiang Yi struggled against his grasp. What did you mean by that? The shadow overhead approached as Shin Zhongnian held out his hands. Jiang Yi found herself encircled by his arms. Subconsciously, she leaned back, her back against the cold glass of the floor-to-ceiling window. Shen Zhongnian's voice, slightly hoarse, came down from above. Jiang Yi, did I ever say we were breaking up back then? Jiang Yi paused, slowly shaking her head. Did you say it then? Again, she shook her head. Over the years, they had grown apart. There had been no chance to say goodbye. Shen Zhongnian had been serious for many years, but now he was acting stubbornly. Since I didn't say it, you're still my girlfriend. If you want to argue and be stubborn, go ahead. You think I'm dead? Jiang Yi was indignant. She tried to argue, but suddenly the shadow darkened her vision. He bent down and kissed her, as if he had been restraining himself for a long time, yet with heavy reluctance, gently and tenderly. Jiang Yi, I miss you so much. Jiang Yi's throat tightened, and for a moment, she couldn't speak. She had never imagined that one day, the proud Shin Zhongnian would lower himself in front of her and say he missed her. Her eyes welled up with tears. Shin Zhongnian felt as if struck by lightning. He raised his hand to cover her eyes, now brimming with tears. Almost sighing, he said, "Don't cry." In their youth, they knew no compromise, like 2 hedgehogs refusing to yield to each other, injuring each other deeply. Even in pain, neither could utter the words of surrender. 5 years had been so long that he felt as long as she was there. Losing dignity was nothing. He covered her eyes, feeling the dampness in his palms. Can we start over? Okay. Time passed second by second in Jiang Yi's silence. Shin Zhongnian's voice was so low it was almost inaudible. If you don't want to, forget it. As a tear fell with his words, he quietly wiped it away with his other hand, lowering his eyes to hide the mist in his eyes, and gently released her. I didn't make it clear back then, and I owe you a goodbye. Let's consider this my way of making it up to you. He turned to leave, but suddenly felt his pinky finger hooked. Jiang Yi's eyes were red with tears. You've come back. What more do you need to make up for? Shin Zhongnian was stunned for a moment, then quickly realized what she meant. He turned back and hugged her fiercely, using all his strength. Jiang Yi stumbled, her back hitting the glass again. Fireworks for the event were lit not far away, glooming in the night. Time seemed to go back to the past, where a young and clumsy technique took a picture of a girl and a cat, secretly added a line, raising a cat, and someone like you. He thought he couldn't forget the youthful joy, but he understood in the increasingly difficult longing that what he couldn't forget was only that person. If it weren't for you, no one would. After walking through 10 years, the boy became a man about to stand and finally found the girl he loved and the cat named Tang Yuan after many voyages. Extra. Bullfighting. Jiang Yi's studio undertook the centennial celebration of Haizhou University. Shin Zhongnian was invited to his alma mater to give a speech. With his handsome appearance and the glorious history of the rich second-generation's entrepreneurial spirit, he successfully deceived a large number of fans. After the speech, the two avoided the crowd and strolled to the basketball court. Shin Zhongnian borrowed a basketball from his classmates on the court. Wanna play? When they were studying, Jiang Yi learned to play basketball with Shin Zhongnian. Now, she didn't hesitate. Sure. Shin Zhongnian dribbled twice, dodged a player, while Jiang Yi bent down, guarding closely. The two of them attracted many onlookers with their back-and-forth play. Before long, Shin Zhongnian feinted with a fake move, dashed to Jiang Yi's left side. Before she could react, suddenly her feet were swept off the ground. With his right hand dribbling, Shin Zhongnian held her around the waist with his left hand, took a few steps to the basket, and lightly leapt, making a precise shot. There was a burst of cheers from the sidelines. Shin Zhongnian held her in his arms, her face flushed. So many people. So what? Shin Zhongnian lowered his head and kissed her. I love you, and I'm not afraid for everyone to know.